Hey, it's me, Raika. Today we're going to have a look at Raku the Rascal from the Wilder faction. Now, this hero wears leather-based gear, is part of the Ranger class, and his primary role is to provide a significant amount of damage for your team and also provide a bit of control. So let's have a look at his skills. His ultimate skill, Acorn Cannon. Raku shoots at the most injured enemy target, dealing 330% damage to them. The attack also deals additional damage worth 55% of their health, which the target has already lost, and stuns them for 4 seconds. Value of the additional damage cannot exceed 900% of Raku's attack rating. If the skill successfully kills the target, it will be cast again. Raku is immune to control effects while using this skill. Level 2. Additional damage dealt is equal to 60% of the health already lost by the enemy target. And level 3, this damage is increased to 65% of the enemy target's health. His next skill, Entangling Shot. Raku deals 220% damage to the enemy target with the highest attack rating, also imprisoning them for 4 seconds. This damage is increased from 2, 3, and 4 all the way to 280% of his attack rating. His next ability, Peckish. Raku eats a snack that makes him immune to control effects and increases his attack rating by 30% and his haste by 30 points for 8 seconds. The level 2, Raku's attack rating is raised by 40% and haste is raised by 40 points while the skill is active, and level 3, his attack rating is increased by 50% and haste by 50 points as well. Now the level 4 or the 30 engravings, the duration of the skill effect is extended to 10 seconds. So this is a pretty significant increase for this buff that Raku applies to himself. His next ability, Raku's Mark, which is a passive. Whenever an enemy target is under the effect of a control skill, Raku will additionally target them with his normal attack. This is his Entangling Shot over the next 4 seconds. And passively, damage dealt to the enemy targets under effects of a control skill is increased by 35%. So this attack over here, his normal attack, is increased by 35%. The level 2 and 3, damage dealt to enemies under effects of the control skills increased by 45%. So this is a pretty significant buff, up to 10% from this base skill over here. And the 60 engravings, whenever an enemy target is under the effect of a control skill, Raku will additionally target them with his normal attack over the next 6 seconds. So this is extra damage that he will be dealing to the enemies while the enemy is controlled. So let's have a look at his signature item. Troublemaker. When unlocked, normal attacks that inflict damage reduce the enemy's haste by 15 points for 6 seconds. This skill can be stacked 3 times. So this is a total of 45 points of haste reduction, with each successive attack resetting the cooldown timer. The level 10, normal attacks that inflict damage reduce the enemy's haste by 20 points for 6 seconds and this stacks 3 times. And the level 20, normal attacks that inflict damage reduce the enemy's haste by 25 points for 6 seconds, and this can be stacked 3 times. So this is a pretty significant debuff that Raku applies to the enemies of a total of 75 points of haste reduction onto the enemy. And if you combine this with his other abilities, such as whenever an enemy is controlled, this is essentially a team-wide haste reduction debuff applied to all enemies. Now the level 30, normal attacks deal an additional damage equal to 15% of the target's current health, but cannot exceed 650% of Raku's attack rating. So this is a pretty significant buff that provides him extra damage when using his ultimate skill. So let's have a look at his furniture. Earnest Lad. The 3 out of 3, normal attacks which strike enemies that are under control effects reduce the cooldown time of Peckish by 1 second. So this is his attack rating and haste buff that he applies to himself. The 9 out of 9, Raku is able to use his ultimate skill an additional time if the initial ultimate did not successfully kill the enemy. This effect can only be used once each time Raku's ultimate skill is used. So this is a pretty significant buff. However, he is mostly used for the skill Raku's Mark. So you essentially want a team that can control the enemies, and when the enemies are controlled, he'll essentially be able to deal damage to enemies that he is currently not targeting. Now, this is especially effective in campaign or any heroes on your team that can control the entire enemy team. So let's have a look at how he does in battle. So usually he's placed on the back row, as you do not want him on the front row, as he's kind of a bit squishy. So place him behind the front row hero so that he can survive for the entire duration of the battle, and so that he can easily control the enemy with the highest attack rating. Now, usually it's enemies on the back row over here that are going to be controlled and be targeted by Raku. Now, as we can see, Raku is currently dealing damage to the enemies. Now, as we can see, this little icon over here, this is marked by the enemies being controlled, and this essentially allows Raku to attack them multiple times with his abilities. Now, as you can see, he can easily one-shot enemies by himself, and this is especially true at higher level deficits, when you can especially chain lock or chain stun the enemy heroes, such that Raku is continually using his mark skill on the enemies. So let's speed up this battle. And as soon as he uses his ultimate, he can easily one-shot all the enemies by himself. Now, if you have a look at the battle statistics, he did all of the damage by himself. So let's have a look at a much higher level deficit in campaign. So usually he's placed in teams where there is a significant amount of control. So as we can see here, we have a hero that provides most of this control, that being Leonardo da Vinci. This is through his cannons and his ultimate stun ability through his portraits. So I'm going to play this battle over here. So when you start battle, we can see Raku's on the backfield. Leonardo da Vinci uses his cannons, and this allows Raku to essentially mark the enemies and start dealing AoE damage to the entire enemy team. They are the portraits, and Raku is slowly dealing damage to the enemies. Now, as we can see, the longer the fight goes on, the more damage he'll be able to deal to the enemies. Now, he's especially effective when there's about 3 to 4 enemies, as usually your team can't necessarily control all 5 enemies at the beginning of the battle. However, when there are 2 to 3 enemies, both his control hero being Leonardo da Vinci and his other hero being Mishka, who provides the front or melee damage control, both of these heroes will essentially stun lock the enemies and not allow them to use any of their abilities, while the main damage dealer being Raku one-shots all the enemies by himself. So I'm just going to speed up this battle over here. And as we can see, one crucial component is all of this team's abilities or ultimates are used, and Raku is constantly kept off auto. This is to allow his ability or his main damage ability, Raku's Mark, to constantly be dealing damage to the entire team. The reason why you don't want to use his ultimate skill, especially in campaign, is it uses up animation time, and in this time, while your teammates are busy controlling the enemies, Raku could be continually dealing AoE or team-wide damage by himself. Now, as we can see just from this specific battle, he did the most amount of damage. So what is the minimum investment that I would recommend investing into Raku? Now, it is crucial, especially if you are investing in this hero, to give him as much attack power and secondary stats as possible. Now, these secondary stats include stats such as crit and haste, which are crucial for Raku to deal all the necessary damage he can do. So the first thing you want to start off is getting to his 30 out of 30 signature item. The reason for this is for his attack power and for the crit rating over here. The crit rating allows him to deal double damage to the enemies, and this significantly skyrockets his damage even further. Now, if you play on auto, then this is extremely powerful, his ultimate skill, which does extra damage to the enemies based on the amount of health they currently have. Then, another important stat increase for him is his furniture. This allows him to use his ultimate skill in additional time, and however, we are mostly concerned about the 3 out of 3 furniture, as this reduces the cooldown time of his package. This package is the haste and attack rating buff that Raku provides to himself, allowing him to do even more damage to his enemies. Now, engravings. Now, there are two sets of engravings that you can do for him. Either the 30 engravings to increase the duration of this package skill. Now, this is crucial, especially on longer duration fights when you're fighting in campaign, usually for the entire duration of the battle. This is crucial as this allows you to maintain the specific buff and allow him to continually deal damage. Now, the other breakpoint is his 60 out of 60 engravings, as this allows him to essentially additionally do more damage with his normal attacks by dealing more damage to the enemies when they are controlled. So you can either engrave him to 30 or you can engrave him to 60. This is up to you and to how many resources you currently have and where you would like to invest him. However, the main breakpoints are his 30 out of 30 signature item, 9 out of 9 furniture, and his 30 engravings.